the Eurofighter. The ultimate pan-European champion. And Airfix's newest starter set. Hey guys, it's model making time and we're back, and today we're looking at this Airfix's new starter set, the Eurofighter Typhoon. I am so excited by this kit. As you can see, I have two. That might be a hint for something going wrong later, but it's also because I did want to build another one as well. Now, this kit was actually in last year's Airfix announcement. It got a little bit behind on this one, but it's out now and I'm really excited. And I already knew what decal scheme I wanted to do on this one, which you've seen the thumbnail and title of this video, so you know I'm building the Austrian Eurofighter Typhoon with the really famous Tiger decal scheme on it. I know there's lots of variants you can do with this. Like the Italians and Germans have done fantastic schemes, and I didn't want to do RAF because I kind of figured everyone was going to do that. So I was like, why not? Let's just do something crazy. Let's do the Austrian Tiger scheme. And Model Maker Decals were releasing a decal set for this last year, which I ended up getting so I could make this, and yeah, all the parts fell together, it seemed. So this kit, as it's an Airfix starter set, does come with the shadow stand, which I don't think you can quite see on the front, but basically it's a stand in the shape of the Eurofighter Typhoon, and it can be in a flying pose on the stand, and the part's already there, so you don't have to drill anything. It's just already got the hole there for you to pop the stand on. Or you can just have it sort of landing it down, sitting down as a normal model. It's really nice. These kits are designed to be simpler than traditional model kits, more accessible to people who are either new at the hobby or just want a really simple build, or I guess people who might even lack the dexterity to do sort of more in-depth, higher part count builds. It's definitely a really cool move from Airfix, I think. It makes the hobby much more accessible. I built the Hawk that they did and the Spitfire. I've also built the F-35, which I did a video on before. So I'm well versed in their sort of starter sets. I've loved every single one that I've done, and I'm really excited to get into this one. Definitely will be a bit of an interesting one, because if you've seen other videos on the subject, you'll know that this has been quite a controversial starter set compared to the other ones. If you're new here, welcome in. My name is Ms. Modeler and I build different model kits, and as you can see from this scheme, I tend to do things a little bit different. And if you're a returning person, welcome back. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel to be kept up to date with the latest and greatest videos, and if you want to support the channel a bit longer so you can fund products like this, become a channel member. Advanced Kit Club members get shouted out at the end of the video. And leave me a comment as well. Have you bought this kit? Or maybe have you even built this kit already? Let me know in the comments down below. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. Also, if you want to become a part of a lovely community of model makers in a forum style where you can discuss your latest builds or your finished projects, then make sure to join the Discord too. The link is in the description down below. This video is going to be a little bit different to my previous videos because although I'll be going through the history of the Eurofighter Typhoon, there is not much to the kit tree because this is a new tooling, so that's kind of it. And there'll also be no unboxing because I did that in my previous video on the Airfix Typhoon starter set from Airfix, so you can see the link to the description, but that's somewhere above me right now. You can pause the video, go watch that, and then come back to this one. Right, so I guess we need to get into the history of the Eurofighter Typhoon, and we'll also have a look at what happened in Austrian Service, because it's controversial. So the Eurofighter Typhoon, like a lot of modern fighter projects, has its origins traced back to the Cold War, developing the next generation of fighter aircraft. Now, the origins of this do lie with the Future European Fighter Aircraft program, which was FIFA or FIFA, depending on how you pronounce it, and was originally with the United Kingdom, Germany, France, Italy, and Spain. France, as you might know, does not operate the Eurofighter Typhoon, instead departing from the program relatively early into its development and deciding to focus on its own indigenous project, the Dassault Rafale, which personally I think is the sleeker and sexier of the two aircraft, and arguably was the first true omni-role aircraft to enter service. Well, At least that's what the French say. After leaving the project in 1985, it left the 4 nations of the United Kingdom, Spain, Germany and Italy to conclude the project alone. But they would be successful in doing so. Like most modern aircraft, it was viewed as being over budget and late. Not long after France had actually left the project in 1985, we had the first flight of the British Aerospace EAP, which is the Experimental Aircraft Program. And this is the aircraft that first really looks like a Typhoon in its modern capacity. This aircraft flew at the Farnborough Air Show and was an example of what was to come. Now, the actual first, from what I can tell, proper prototype of the Eurofighter Typhoon was the DA-1, which flew almost 10 years later, 8 years later, in 1994 on the 27th of March in Germany. As you can probably tell by the timescales for this, the project was already starting to experience budget constraints, going over budget, technical challenges, and given that it is a cross-country project, it also saw political challenges too. It would be another 9 years before the aircraft first saw service in 2003 with the Royal Air Force. I remember this aircraft sort of reaching the point where it was about to enter service. I remember seeing mock-ups, but also like the first initial aircraft that were going to go into service at air shows as well. Like, it was really interesting scenes, because now it's like an F-16, you see them all the time at air shows, but I remember like the hype around this when it was coming into service and seeing the first air show where one was actually in service. It was, I don't know, it's such a good memory to have. The Royal Air Force and Luftwaffe, the German Air Force, were the first to operationalize the type in that 2003 period. It was initially focused on air superiority, but as you will know for the Eurofighter now, it is also used in a ground strike role, and it has replaced aircraft like the Tornado in RAF service, both in the F3 and the GR4, which is the fighter and the ground strike aircraft respectively. Since then, it has flourished into service with all 4 of those air arms that helped develop the type, which was the Luftwaffe of Germany, the Ejecto del Air of Spain, the Aeronautica Militare of Italy, and the Royal Air Force. But one of the earliest export customers was Austria, was the Österreich Luftstreitkräfte. I have no idea if I said that even remotely close, but hopefully I have. After its initial sales in Austria, the Eurofighter Typhoon has struggled with competition with both the Dassault Rafale, but also with aircraft like the Saab Gripen and the F-35. It has tried to export to countries such as Canada, Turkey, India, Egypt, and it's been a bit of a whirlwind. Even places like Finland, where people were like, they already have the Hawk, they must be successful, did not end up getting this type. In fact, it's lost out a lot to aircraft like the F-35 and Gripen. Perhaps due to the existing relationships with BAE in the Middle East, it did successfully export to Saudi Arabia, and that was then followed by Oman, Kuwait and Qatar as well. It has remained a key player in the global market, but I think this will end up being an aircraft that is known as the European fighter more than anything else. Who knows, maybe we'll get export partners somewhere else in the world, particularly as this aircraft leaves European frontline service sometime in the 2050s, but I don't know, that could be anything. That's what happened with other aircraft though, like the Alpha Jet and the Mirage as well, but I guess only time will tell. The aircraft we're looking at today though comes from Austrian Service, and Austria are an interesting chapter in the Eurofighter journey, because there's a lot of debate about whether or not Austria should have even taken the type, whether or not there was bribery and corruption that led to them taking the type. This aircraft was designed to modernize Austria's outdated air force. And I mean, it was going to. The question was whether or not this was the right aircraft for the type. Again, considering the counterparts that were available, considering Austria hasn't faced a military threat for quite some time, a lot of people view this as significantly overkilled, especially because Austria focuses on peacekeeping and disaster relief. And what made it worse was there alleged irregularities found in the acquisition process, and I remember reading about this at the time, and even reading about it now, there still seems to be a lot of anger and upset about it. Now, Austria had announced that they were going to replace the type all the way back in 2017 due to the increase in costs of just sort of maintaining and operating the aircraft, especially for its use in Austrian service. But I guess that could all change given the current political landscape, and it may end up being that the Eurofighter remains as part of Austria's core for quite some time. I guess it's something only time will tell. I am still kind of shocked that it's remained in service, given that it's been 8 years since they made that announcement, but again, it's just one of them things. We're just going to have to see what happens. Either way, it means that the Austrian Typhoon is not a shoo-in to be seen in the future air shows, and I'm really glad that I managed to see them doing a roll demo at the Royal International Air Tattoo. At least for now, we know the Austrian skies are safe with the Eurofighter Typhoon. Well, there's no kit story with this type because this is a brand new tool, and as I mentioned, I'm doing the Austrian version, which I'm using model maker decals for. I ended up buying a couple of these because, well, you'll see in the construction of this kit. This variant is obviously different to what's in current RAF service, so I'm not sure if there are external differences really that you would see. I'll be honest, I wasn't really too fussed anyway. I was always going to do it on this one because it's an easy way for me to make this kit. The issue for me with a lot of modern jets is how long they can take to build, because it often feels like it's how many parts can you make to make it as detailed as possible, rather than is this an enjoyable, fun hobby. That's not to say it's wrong to enjoy those kits, it's just sometimes I just want to build something quick rather than spending 3 weeks making something before even doing the decals. This was all about show, and so it made sense to do it on the simple kit. The main thing missing from this is going to be the drop tanks, because they're not included on the Eurofighter Typhoon. There's no weaponry included at all. A lot of people seem really upset about this, but I mean, if you see one at an air show, that's normally the case. And also on training flights, like, they're not always going to be armed. It's just kind of how it is. I'm not too fussed about it, and you can always buy some weaponry if you really want them. That's the beauty of modelling, you can always add. Anyway, let's go and have a look at the construction of this kit. Construction of the Eurofighter Typhoon starts like any construction, taking things out of the sprue. In this instance, it's the wings, which contain the lower fuselage and the top sections of the wings. I found these went together quite nicely, and I just used my standard Ravel glue for this. The part count for this aircraft is obviously quite low as a starter set, and so once you have the wings done, it already feels like you're quite substantially through the aircraft, only needing to really put the fuselage on for it to feel pretty much complete. Obviously there is a bit more to it than that, but it really does feel like it ramps up really quickly. Now it came for the two larger fuselage parts, so this is sort of the top and sides of the fuselage. These fit onto the wings quite nicely. There was a little bit of fiddling just to make sure that they fit completely fine, but there was no issue with this. I just made sure I dry fit them to make sure they went on, but I was impressed how quickly this became a pretty much complete aircraft. Obviously, I just needed to make sure I replicated this over both sides and then glued them both together. And then it came for the bit that I have seen every single YouTuber I've seen in model making have an issue, which is putting the fuselage halves together. And it felt like I was doing something wrong, but you've literally put together just two parts on this, and it just didn't seem to go together properly, and it was really unclear why. I thought, oh, I must be doing something wrong, but now I know that almost everyone has had the same issue, that it feels like the fuselage parts are warped, or there's just something a little bit off with them, so they don't align. As you can see, the wing actually came off on mine, so I ended up having to pop that back on. But yeah, this was me just sort of trying to get it all together so that I could get a nice fit. It did end up going together, but I tell you, this was much more of a struggle than I would have anticipated for a starter set in particular. I think you can really see here that as I'm putting some bits together, it just seems to sort of pop itself apart, and it just was a really odd struggle. It definitely wasn't something I expected, just putting it together, to be honest, but it did end up going together okay. And it does look really cool. Like, it's impressive how quickly this becomes a Eurofighter. Now, I tested the shadow stand as well, just to make sure it was all okay. And then I made sure I put together the cockpit. I know a lot of people probably did this bit first, but with a kit this simple, you can afford to sort of do things the way you want to an extent. The cockpit is really simple, and initially for some reason I didn't believe there was a seat, when actually you do get a seat included. Don't know why I just completely overlooked that. It must have been just I didn't see the part at the time, so ignore that when I start painting it. I do put the seat in later. I do think the cockpit overall is nice, much like the F-35. Again, this is a starter set. It's not as comprehensive as a more complex kit, but at the same time, I think you get a really lovely looking cockpit in the end. Now, I just do this grey all over, and then I do go with a slightly darker shade, or it was a really dark black, I can't quite remember, but I just went over it to give it some sort of highlighting, and then I will go over with the buttons as well, all in their separate colours, as you can see here. I used to use reference photos online, and to be honest, good vibes, because you want to make sure that you have enough colour in there that it doesn't look too monochrome, but not too much that it looks a bit cartoony, and I hopefully got the balance. You'll notice the control panel is actually blank, and that's because we're going to use the decals for this. I'm not going to use the rest of the decals for this kit, because obviously we're building an entirely different variant of the Typhoon in Austrian Service, but we will use it to get the control panel looking nice and complete, which makes the overall cockpit just feel absolutely beautiful. I do think this is a really nice one, especially for its scale. Now, once we've got that done, we need to put it inside the aircraft and then glue the fuselage halves together, which does again take a little bit of work, and you'll see that as I put it together, it does sort of fight against me a little bit. Again, it does feel like this is a bit warped, and I know other content creators have said similar things. But once it went together and I got the nose on, I was really impressed that it looked fully like a Eurofighter already, with that sharp and aggressive take. Now, as is tradition, I did manage to miss me getting this part on camera, but I did put the exhaust onto the aircraft, so that's where the afterburners are. And honestly, it just went on really nicely. And that's the thing with this build. Everything does go together really nicely, except the first two cockpit halves. And that's what's really unfortunate, is you shouldn't really feel that any one part is difficult. And yet, the first bits you do, other than the wings, do feel quite difficult, and I can imagine it being quite off-putting to someone who's brand new to the hobby, because even as someone who's been building for years and doing content, and I guess as well, like, I've built a lot of kits that are more limited around. I've used them resin kits, and if I felt like I was doing something wrong, I think it's probably safe to say that a newcomer might also feel like they're doing something wrong, or they're just not good enough. So yeah, I think it's really important to make sure everything fits together nicely. Now, you saw me doing the undercarriage here. The undercarriage on this kit is brilliant. It sits really nicely, and like everything else on this kit, other than the main fuselage halves, it went together really nicely. Undercarriage is a pet peeve of mine, and I'm glad to report that this one holds the weight of the model really nicely and will not be difficult for anyone. We then have to put forward canards onto the aircraft, which completes the iconic delta shape of the Typhoon, like many modern aircraft. And I did decide to dip this canopy into looks like glass. Now, I will admit, I did actually manage to end up screwing up one of the canopies, and it's not the fault of either looks like glass or the canopy itself. It was just me just being really bad at painting. I did, however, learn how to sand down a canopy and make it look like new again, but I had no luck with canopies. One day, messed up a couple, and just decided to pop a new one on. I did put some filler on the aircraft, and I did do some sanding as well. You can see me using just my little files here, just to make sure I get a really nice finish on the majority of the aircraft. I use different levels, and you can tell that by the colours that I'm using. So I think the orange one is the medium, the grey one is the sort of the rough one, and then there's another grey one which is like the fine one, and then a red one which is ultra fine. But I'm just using them to try and make sure I get a nice finish across the surface of the aircraft. now came the painting, and I looked online for resources to work out what colour to use. Obviously I'm going with a primer initially, and this is the old Life Colour primer. I don't like this primer as much as their new one. I've said before, like, it does work, but I did have some issues with it. Moving over to the new primer, I find it much better. So yeah, I will not be using the old primer sets that they have, but it did its job in the end. But for the actual colours for the aircraft itself, I did some research online to try and work out what colour I needed to use. And what surprised me was it was actually a colour I already had. It was the Armée de l'Air grey that I've been using on my World War II Armée de l'Air aircraft for the longest time, or at least that was the closest match in Life Colours range. The nose of the aircraft, the radome, is barley grey, and that seems to be pretty universal across the Typhoon range. That colour does seem to vary depending on the wear, because that is the area of the aircraft that gets the most wear and tear. But yeah, I just freehanded this on. I got quite a nice line on it, and then I just tidied it up afterwards. But overall, I was really happy with both the paints I used. You're not going to see most of the base colour of the Typhoon anyway in the end, because, well, as we know, we are going to be painting this or using decals to make this look like it's painted in the Tiger scheme. You can now see me going over with the Armée de l'Air grey over the top of the primer. I'm just doing quite light coats of this just to get a really nice even tone throughout. I had no issues with the painting, to be honest, and I really enjoyed it. The airbrush I'm using for this is Gallery's airbrush. You can find a link in the description if you want to purchase one of these airbrushes through their store, and it's an affiliate link, so I will get a little bit of kickback when you purchase one, which obviously helps the channel, but do whatever's best for you. The one I'm using is their trigger design. This is not, I would say, the most popular design of airbrush. Most people like the one with the trigger on the top that you pull with your finger. I really enjoyed this style. It just suits me better. I find it much easier to hold and much more ergonomic. I get less sort of hand strain, I guess. But to each their own. Some people love these, some people hate them, but I really enjoy them. But I've also got sort of the Gallery Mobius as well, so you know, I've got a range that I can use. But yeah, the paints went on really nicely. I use a mix of Life Colour with some Life Colour thinner and a little bit of retarder. I always think it's magic just how quickly an aircraft goes from looking like a pile of plastic to something so complete just from a coat of paint. It just looks so spectacular. I'm really proud of the colours. I think they look really great. And yeah, I did knock the nose. You can see a little bit of the barley grey came off, but I will just go back and paint that on by hand just to give it another coat. But yeah, look how quickly this turned into a Eurofighter, guys. Now, I do need to preface and warn you that I did not, for some reason, record me putting on a lot of the decals, but I had to go back and redo a lot of them. So you are going to see them, just one half of it is already complete. But yeah, I did mess this up anyway, and that meant I had to redo an entire half of the aircraft, as you will see shortly. So the decals come in big sheets, and they are large decals, and that can make it quite difficult. Now, I actually think I ended up not putting the centre fuselage parts forward enough, and that's resulted in a bit of misalignment. As you can see, I did end up fixing this by cutting up a second set of decals and fixing it, but you can see I've managed to get some fold on it, and these decals do tear as well. I found once they've sort of been on the model for a couple of seconds, if you do pull them around, they will tear quite quickly. I think that's, to be honest, probably because they're quite a large decal, and so there's a lot of suction onto the model, sort of, I guess, the tension with the liquid, and then if you're pulling it, it just creates a lot of pressure and rips quite easily. So these are decals you need to be a bit more careful of. I think that's the case with any really large decals. But yeah, I did struggle with this. I did start to pull up some of the paint. I did start to pull up some of the decal, and it just got to a point where I was like, am I even going to be able to do this? And at one point I was really devastated because I'd originally ordered these, I think, from Hanats. Hanats have run out of stock, and then I did manage to find one place with these in stock. So I managed to order some more so that I could complete it. And I ended up ordering 3 sets of these in the end. The first initial set, and then I ordered a second set to obviously replace the ones I damaged, and then a third set as a backup in case I did the same mistake again. And yeah, I didn't need the third set luckily, but I did use 2 sets overall. And you can see the misalignment there, and I was devastated. I really thought, I've screwed this up, it's gonna look awful. Trust the process, guys. You can repair anything, but it just takes a little bit of time. I don't know if I got this looking 100%. I don't think I did. I think there are many of you out there who will do a much better job than I did, but I still like what I ended up getting. I think it looks interesting. I think it was great to do this on the starter set as well, because it meant that I didn't spend much time on the modelling. I could spend much more on the decals. But yeah, you'll see me sort of just trying to get it in place for a little bit here. Here's where I made the mistake of trying to reset it all, and it just got to a point where it just wasn't manageable anymore, and the whole thing just collapsed, and then I couldn't straighten it all out, and then I had to replace it. I've also ripped parts of the wings as well, which I'm going to have to replace too, and it just became quite a struggle, quite a kerfuffle. And yeah, I genuinely found this devastating at the time. I was really upset because I was like, I've spent so long doing this, and then I've just screwed it up. And it was user error, it's not the decals, it's me. And then it came to me putting the new ones on. Now, there were these white patches that went into the centre bit, and I put those on again before I even went to put on the main stripe, because I wanted to try and make sure I repaired the white where I hadn't fully got the white on, and there were some bits that I knew I was going to try and paint as well. So I went ahead and put this white bit on where there's sort of a raised section of the aircraft to try and make sure I got it looking as good as I possibly could. Once that was on and looking as good as I'm probably going to get it, I did go ahead and put on the next section, which was the large side fuselage cockpit, and I was just lining this up with both the other fuselage half but also the wings to try and make sure I got something looking really even. You can see at the bottom left where I have sort of broken off the decal from the wings, trying to fix it all. So I tried not to overwork it so much this time. And then what I'm going to do as well is I'm going to cut up the other wing section and just repair it all. So I'm doing this really carefully. I'm trying to make sure I don't break it this time and just taking my time. You can see I've got my nails to match the Tiger, but unfortunately it took me so long to do this video, just through life getting in the way, that I ended up not even having these nails when I filmed the video. Now, as you can see, I'm cutting up bits of decal and sort of doing a little bit of surgery to get it all looking complete again, and I do think this worked. In the end, I did get a model that looks more complete. I don't think you can super tell without sort of knowing beforehand that I've done this little surgery on it, because I think I colour matched it quite well. I just tried to cut as close as I could on the new set of decals, and yeah, I think it looked okay in the end. Obviously, I do need to do some touch up as well on the model, so there are bits where I pulled the paint off by using too much of the decal solution, and in the end I think I ended up repairing it all and making it look okay. This was a big project for me. Like, I've never spent this much on decals. The decals themselves were not cheap. I'd been waiting for these decals to come out for the longest time, ever since Airfix announced they were doing the Eurofighter start set, and then as soon as they did, I got these decals and I was just so excited, and I put so much love into this project, I guess, because there were parts where I was just like, I'm done. The video won't go out, and I'm glad I got to a point where I could release it, because yeah, it looked good in the end. Right then, you've seen me build this kit, and yeah, this was not the easiest. I'm really unhappy with how the decals ended up going. They were really odd. I can't describe it, but it almost feels like cling film. Like, it's a really odd texture for the decals. I've worked with similar stuff before when I did decals decals, but these feel, I don't know, even harder, and they didn't feel as strong. Like, I didn't feel like I could really pull these and get these in place without them ripping. So I'm not really sure how I feel about these decals overall. I'd probably still try the brand again, especially for doing a complex and unusual subject. It's much easier than masking it, for sure. But yeah, I found it quite difficult. Part of the issue is going to be that I don't fit the kit properly, and I think also I misunderstood where some of the bits went. But I think I ended up getting a nice looking aircraft in the end. Is it the best that it could be? No. I definitely could have done better, but once the decals were on, I couldn't move them, and whenever I did, they broke, and then I had to buy decals to replace them and fix them. So like, I ended up buying a set that was just for spares. It was a whole mess, but I think I got something in the end. I'm really hoping you're going to like what you see, and I guess it's now time to look at this Austrian Tiger Typhoon popping off. Well, what do you think? I'm still not sure. I think I like this. The kit itself, I obviously will buy again. I bought a couple of them now because this is a really nice kit to make. I want to make it in a couple of different operators. I really like the Typhoon. I think it's great for buying my aftermarket decals for a really quick and nice display scheme build, especially with the stand. Also, having the stand means it's easier for me to get these in my display case because I can put something else underneath it, which I know is not the point of buying a model kit, but it helps. As for whether or not I would recommend it, if you want to build a Typhoon, it's definitely an option. Whether I would recommend it over other Airfix starter sets, I don't think I would. I definitely think the F-35, for me personally, is peak, Airfix starter set. I think that remains their best starter set by a large margin. As for the Hawk, that also is fantastic. And Spitfires, people seem to have issues with, but I built them, they were fine. For me, this is, and I really hate saying this because I do love UFX, it's probably the lowest tier out of the starter sets, but it's still a good starter set. I don't want anyone to misconstrue this as me saying it's bad, but I think what I'm saying is if you are new to the hobby and you're looking at building just a starter set, I personally would recommend the Hawk or the F-35 or the Spitfire above them. I can't comment on the other new starter sets because I've not built them yet, and that wouldn't be fair for me to do. But from what I've seen, they're also amazing. So things like the BF-109, for example. I still really enjoyed the kit, but I found that the concerns I had, other model makers have also had those concerns as well. All those issues that they face when constructing it, including things feeling like they're not aligning or requiring a little bit more work to get into place, which is not really what you would want for a kit that's designed to be at the ultimate beginner-friendly market. That's something the F-35 did fantastically, something this kit perhaps hasn't got quite right. Now, I know Airfix had some kits that went back before because they didn't meet their product standards. Whether or not this was the kit, I have no idea. I have no more information on that than anyone else does. But given what's happened with this one, who knows? I'm still glad they did this. It's a really good subject. As I say, this is like an hour build rather than like a 2-week build, which I still think is great. I'm not throwing shade on it at all. I have no idea how much of this I've cut out because I went on for quite a while about what I feel about this kit, but the TLDR is, yes, it is a good kit. Yes, I would still recommend it. It's just not quite as good as the F-35 or the Hawk. So I guess in terms of buy or fly, I would say if you want the detail, you want all the extra weapons and options that you get in some of the other boxings, including, I guess, Airfix's own historical boxings, maybe go for them instead. If you want a simple kit to build, you want one you can do literally in the morning whilst you're waiting for your laundry to dry or something, which is when I did mine, by all means get this one. You also get the stand, which I think is great. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I really enjoyed this video and I hope you've enjoyed watching it as much as I did making it. If you've liked what you've seen here today, make sure to subscribe to the channel, and if you want to support the channel more, become a channel member. Advanced kit level members get shouted out at the end of each video. And if you want to join a lovely community of model makers, make sure to join the Discord. The link is in the description below, and you can join a friendly, lovely community of model makers in a forum style discussion. Also, leave me a comment down below too. What did you think of this kit when you made it? Because I know you've already got it. Well, thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you later next time, guys. Bye! Thank you so much to all of my channel members. A special shout out goes to my advanced kit level members, including Son of a Gun, Baz P, Bob and Genevieve Albridge, David Barber, Taggers365, Jeff Dioramas, Max Tand, Gavin Blackburn, Marcus Cranfield, Bobby G, Charles Parker, Dafty Duck, and my 2 longest time supporters, Crazy Locha and Explosive Water. Thank you so much, guys. You all mean the world to me and help make this channel better every single month, so thank you for yours. If you enjoyed what you've seen here today, make sure to subscribe to the channel to be kept up to date with my latest and greatest videos. And, well, there's a recommended video here, just for you. Have a lovely day wherever you are in the world. Love you. Bye.